As you continue on your chess journey, it's a great feeling when you start to win more games and notice that you are making stronger moves. If you really want to take your game to the next level, it's essential to start thinking about your opponent's moves and truly understanding their ideas before deciding on your own move. The most obvious idea behind an opponent's move is a check, such as Queen b1, delivering a check to our king. Since our king is under attack, it's easy to react instantly and play King h2. Unfortunately, if we play too quickly, we risk missing the entire story behind our opponent's move. Before responding, try to understand all of the things your opponent's move does. Yes, Black's queen checked White's king, but was that the only purpose of the move? Notice Black's queen was also attacking the unprotected bishop, so Black can play queen takes b5. Black is no longer down a piece and has a good position. Let's take a look at this position again. Now that we understand that Black's queen is attacking both our king and unprotected bishop, known as a double attack, is there a way we can both block the check and protect our bishop? If you found bishop f1, great job! We block the check and protect our bishop at the same time, so White is up a piece and enjoys a great position. Now let's take our game to the next level and start to think seriously about our opponent's moves and ideas in the following examples. In this position, after Black plays knight b4, instead of immediately focusing on what we should do, let's make sure we understand the point behind Black's last move. When a knight begins to jump, we want to carefully consider where it may land. Knight takes a2 looks pointless because we can simply capture it with our rook. Where else is the knight attacking? That's right, the pawn on c2. Notice that Black's bishop on f5 is also attacking that pawn. A common mistake is to understand that our pawn is under attack and then decide to move it with c3, attacking Black's knight and moving the pawn to safety. How could this be a mistake? Unfortunately, the knight wasn't just attacking the pawn, it was also attacking the c2 square. So Black can play knight c2 check, forking White's king and rook on a1. White should make the best out of a bad situation and move the king, because if White plays queen takes c2, Black wins a queen for a knight with bishop takes c2. Let's take a second look at this position and try to find a better option for White. Since Black has two pieces attacking the c2 square, and we only have one defender, the queen, what should we do about this threat? If we play e4, trying to block the Black bishop's diagonal, Black will simply capture the pawn with the bishop, and we still have to solve our main problem, the weak c2 square. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like more time to think about the position. If you found the defensive resource knight a3, great job! We don't usually like moving our knight to the edge of the board where it controls fewer squares, but this inconvenience is easier to accept than losing a serious amount of material. Now that c2 is properly protected, we're ready to kick the knight out of our territory with c3. And if Black plays knight takes c2 check, as long as we capture with our least valuable defender first with knight takes c2, bishop takes c2, and queen takes c2, after all of the trades, White is up an extra bishop for a pawn, so Black should have spent more time thinking about the consequences of our knight a3 move before capturing the c2 pawn. Let's continue to work on understanding the ideas behind our opponent's moves. In this position, White decides to play queen f6. Take a moment to understand all of the ideas behind White's last move. You may notice Black's rook on d8 is under attack. So with that information in mind, Black may play rook e8, moving the rook to safety and adding a second attacker to the e4 pawn. Before deciding on our move, don't forget to ask, what are all of the ideas behind my opponent's last move? It is true that White's queen attacks 3 pawns, but none of these moves look very good. Remember to always look for checks and captures. In this case, White can win the game immediately with queen g7. Checkmate. After carefully considering all of the ideas behind our opponent's last move, how can we both prevent checkmate and protect our rook on d8? It might not look possible, but your knight on c5 is ready to come to the rescue. Where can you move your knight to stay in the game? That's right, you can play knight e6. This move prevents checkmate on g7, as the knight would simply capture the queen, and it also protects the rook on d8. Knight e6 isn't the first move that may come to mind, but by taking the time to fully understand the ideas behind your opponent's move, we can find these important resources. Sometimes you can make a threat and it seems like your opponent is completely ignoring you. If white plays rook to f1, we may expect black to play rook f8 to protect the hanging pawn on f7. It may come as a surprise to see black play rook to d8. This move seems to completely ignore our threat of rook takes f7. Of course, sometimes your opponent only focuses on their own moves and misses the purpose behind your moves. If you don't see a point behind your opponent's last move, you need to trust yourself and continue with your plan. If it turns out you overlooked a tactic, you will gain a valuable lesson, but you cannot fear threats that you do not see. It turns out that rook d8, lining up with our king, is a very tricky way to defend the f7 pawn. So white should move the king off of the same file as black's rook with a move such as king c4. After rook takes f7, black has a surprising move which wins white's rook. Take a moment to look for this incredible resource. If you found the powerful move knight e5 check, excellent job. The pawn on d4 cannot capture the knight as it would put our own king in check, which is illegal. And after white moves the king to safety with a move such as king e2, black wins the rook with knight takes f7. Let's take a look at one more example together. Chess is such a beautiful game as there are so many layers to discover. In this position, black plays knight takes b3. What is the point of this move? It looks like black is simply offering a trade of pieces. One way to help improve your game is to ask yourself every time your opponent makes a move, if my opponent had another move, what would they play? We might assume black would simply move the knight to safety and be up a piece. If white doesn't think carefully about this question and simply plays a takes b3, white is in for a rude awakening. When you ask, if my opponent had another move, what would they play? Always look at every single check and capture your opponent can play, because these are the moves that may cost you the game, as in this case, with queen c1. Checkmate. Since black's threat is queen c1 checkmate, you might make a quick decision and play a move like g3, opening up an escape square for your king. Before deciding to not recapture black's knight and accept being down a piece, is there another way to capture black's knight and prevent checkmate? Notice white's queen is on c7, and it could guard the checkmate square if the c2 pawn wasn't in the way. This means we can play c takes b3. So now black cannot play queen c1, as we would simply capture the queen. You've done an excellent job working through one of the most important skills to develop, always looking out for your opponent's moves and making sure you understand the ideas hidden behind them. Now let's stay alert and remain one step ahead of our opponent's moves and the challenges.